In my last video, we heard that several countries will yield their powers to one of the 10 global kingdoms. The Bible prophesied this thousands of years ago, and it's happening in our lifetime. The books of Daniel and Revelation tell us this will happen during the end of days. And the scriptures also tell us that these 10 kingdoms will then give up their authority to the Antichrist, and he will then lead the whole world into the most horrific time humanity has ever known. For more information about this, may I suggest reviewing the first and second episodes of this series, that would be 7a and 7b, and you'll see that the European Union's countries, regions, call it what you may, is one of the 10 horned kingdoms described in the Bible. And in today's video, we're going to look at 3 more of these developing kingdoms. And they are the areas around Japan, Australia and South Africa, and then Russia and Eastern Europe. While hearing about each of these, notice how they are following the pattern of the European Union with topics like an overall governing authority, a one currency system, climate control, and population reduction. The first area we'll hear about centers around Japan. The area has been involved with several proposed unions, including the Japan-China-South Korea Free Trade Agreement, as you'll see in this video clip.
China, Japan, and South Korea held the first trade talks in 5 years on Sunday, amid concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's import tariffs. The 3 Asian manufacturing giants agreed to, quote, closely cooperate for a comprehensive and high-level talks to improve free trade in the region. That's according to a statement released after the meeting. Trade ministers from the 3 nations met ahead of Trump's planned announcement on Wednesday of more tariffs in what he calls, quote, Liberation Day. Last week, Trump announced 25% import tariffs on cars and auto parts, a move that may hurt companies, especially Asian automakers, which are among the largest vehicle exporters to the U.S. Seoul, Beijing, and Tokyo are major U.S. trading partners.
Did you notice how President Trump's decision to usher in global tariffs is helping to actually cement this union of countries? That wouldn't be by chance, would it? Is there anything by chance? As I've said several times, God always gets it right. God said there would be 10 kingdoms in the last days, and it's happening right under our noses, whether our world leaders realize it or not. And now let's look at the areas around Australia and South Africa. Australia has already joined various unions with other countries, including the Australia-New Zealand Closer Economic Relations Trade Agreement, sometimes shortened as CERTA. Anyway, it came into effect in 1983, and you will see this in an archival video clip and then a more recent one.
Let's head across the ditch where there are calls for Australia and New Zealand to set aside their own economic priorities and stop pitting policies against one another and instead work together. Oliver Hartwich is the Executive Director of the New Zealand Initiative, and he wants to see Australia and New Zealand stop competing with each other by giving tax breaks to industries in order to entice more migrants to their country. Oliver Hartwich joins me now from Wellington. Oliver, thank you so much for your time. You've written a great piece for The Australian recently titled No Competition, Time to Level Up Trans-Tasman Business Relations. And you talk about the closer economic relations agreement between the 2 countries. Can you explain exactly what it is?
Sure. Closer economic relations between Australia and New Zealand is a free trade agreement. And it dates back to 1983. That's when the 2 governments came together to create a much closer economic relationship. That's why it's called CER. The idea is actually to remove tariffs and quotas to really integrate the two countries so that companies can easily do business on either side of the Tasman. And it works. It works for the benefit of Australians. It works for the benefit of New Zealanders. Everybody benefits from having this very close economic integration of the two countries. We're working on standards. We have the same food standards. If you have one qualification in Australia, it is recognized in New Zealand and vice versa. So actually, both countries benefit from this arrangement, but it could be a bit better.
How should Australia and New Zealand go about doing this better?
Well, it might sound a bit crazy, but we could probably borrow an idea from the European Union. Yes, the European Union with all of its red tape, but sometimes they get things right. And they have created a common market, of course, which is a step beyond the free trade agreement that we have between Australia and New Zealand.
They are saying things will be better for the countries involved. In other words, things will be better for the 10 kingdoms, so that Satan's right-hand man, the Antichrist, can rule the world. And people need to wake up. It's the same gig Satan made to Eve in the Garden of Eden. And also, did you notice that CERTA will use the European Union's pattern, but they want to create an even better system between Australia and New Zealand. And get this. There have been recent calls for Australian and New Zealand businesses to extend this union to other Pacific nations that will move them to a single market so that, quote, free movement of people and goods can occur. This was presented as ways to stabilize the region, reduce security threats, and decrease political unrest. Sounds pretty good, right? Yep. So the Antichrist can prevent you from buying and selling, or even going from one place to another, just as the Bible says it will be during the end of days. And again, folks, we're being set up. There's even been talks to formalize this idea into a Pacific Union with its formal institutions, a common charter, and its own common currency. Now, along with 10 horned kingdoms being foretold in the Bible thousands of years ago, world leaders, members of the Club of Rome, actually described decades ago how 10 nations would eventually govern the world. Look closely at this map, and you'll clearly see that this down under union includes South Africa. So are there any signs of that happening? Yes, indeed. And as I've said, right under our noses. Australia maintains a significant relationship with South Africa as part of the Southern African Development Community. And both countries have significant investments with each other, especially in natural resources. The Australian Southern Africa Business Chamber of Commerce facilitates trade and investments between the two countries. So it's all coming together, just like God said it would. And now let's move on to yet another of the 10 horned kingdoms. You might think that Russia, a communist country, would never go along with combining their countries with others. But the unthinkable is already happening. Russia has agreed already with other Eastern European countries to form the Eurasian Economic Union. And this union creates an energy superpower that now produces about 20% of the world's natural gas and 9% of the world's electrical energy. And here is an archival video clip, as well as an updated one.
The Eurasian Economic Union, or EEU, is a bloc of nations which include Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia. And it added 6th member recently when Iran signed a free trade agreement. This agreement will become permanent and replace the earlier temporary pact that was in force since 2019. The new agreement will allow parties to conduct mutual trade, provide tariff benefits, and remove customs duties in exchange of goods. The previous deal led to an increase in mutual trade between Iran and EU to $6.2 billion in 2022 from $2.4 billion in 2019. Essentially, the primary objective of the Eurasian Economic Union is to create a common market in the former Soviet region. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia pursued various integration projects for fostering economic partnership in former Soviet nations but was resisted by many like Ukraine. However, there were others that sought an economic union with Russia for political support, security assurance, and access to cheap energy. In 2009, the EU initiated the Eastern Partnership Policy to deepen EU economic relations with its neighboring post-Soviet states such as Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. However, Russia saw this as an intrusion into its sphere of dominance and sought to create an alternative economic bloc. Consequently, the Eurasian Customs Union, which later became Eurasian Economic Union, was founded by Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. On 29 May 2014, the treaty establishing the EEU was signed, which came into force on 1 January 2015. The EEU has its own institutions, much like that of the European Union, like it has its own regulatory body, the Eurasian Economic Commission, situated in Moscow, and a court of the Eurasian Economic Union based in Minsk.
Again, notice how this union freely admits they are modeled after the EU, the European Union. Are you seeing a pattern? And by the way, you may be wondering why there's such a mess going on in the Ukraine. My friend, Ukraine is smack dab in the middle of two competitive unions, the EU and the EAEU. It should also be noted that this Russia-Eastern European Union has even proposed their own currency called the Altin. Also, this new union sheds light on Russia's recent behavior towards not only Ukraine, but the country of Georgia as well. And after all, according to the map you saw a moment ago, these two countries are to be included in the Eurasian Economic Union. And gee, I wonder how that's going to happen. So with my previous video, 7b plus today's, that's 4 of the 10 kingdoms. And my next video will focus on 3 more countries who have, or at least are, forming a consolidated union, including multiple Arab countries. So if you haven't done so, be sure and touch the red subscribe button below so you'll know when the next video is released. And if the button is not available, simply type my name, Wayne Ammons, in the search window of the platform you're on. I'm telling you, pieces of the puzzle are rapidly coming together, just as the Bible said. Jesus Christ is soon returning to catch away his saints, and then an awful time will occur for those left behind. And you don't want to be here when that happens. Get right with Jesus Christ now.